Good evening. We'll call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, do we have any regrets for this evening's meeting?
We have regrets from Mayor Burton for this evening.
Thank you. And I see we also have various members joining us virtually. Just any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none on the screen or here. And can I get a mover and seconder to move into the committee of the whole? Councillor Longo and
Madam
Councillor
Chair, we
McNeese.
can't hear you.
Can't hear you, Madam Chair. You're cutting out.
Okay, thank you. We just had a bit of technical difficulties with our sound for those at home to be able to hear us. Anyway, I asked for a motion for moving us into the committee of the whole, and got a motion by Councillor Longo, seconded by Councillor McNeese. Any opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. We are now in the committee of the whole, and we have a consent item 4.15. Do we have any questions? We have someone on staff, should anybody have any concerns. Councillor Adams.
I'd be happy to move item 4.1 for you.
Thank you. Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, we're moving to our public meeting report, and I believe we have a presentation from Rob Russell of Robert Russell Planning Consultants, Inc. on this item. Welcome, Mr. Russell.
Madam Chair, members of committee, it's been a while since I've been to one of these in person, so everything's been virtual lately. As you noted, my name is Rob Russell. I'm president and principal of Robert Russell Planning Consultants, and I'm the authorized agent on behalf of Rampant Holdings, Inc., who are the applicants in these applications. So I do have a presentation ready. I'll just wait till that's on screen. Okay, so as I noted, the applicant in this case is Rampant Holdings, Inc. The address of the subject property is 1086 Burnhamthorpe Road. Town file numbers are Z:1310:18. That's the zoning file application. And the subdivision is 24T-22009/1310. There we go. So here's an aerial photo of the general context to give you kind of an idea where this property is. So this property is situated, if you could make out the red box outline there, situated on the south side of Burnhamthorpe Road, approximately midway between Trafalgar Road and the 407, 403. It is currently mostly agricultural in use. It's about 21 hectares in size, just over 21 hectares. The north portion of the subject property is currently home to the Joshua Creek Cultural Heritage Art Center. I'm not sure if I got that name exactly right. Yes, Joshua Creek Heritage Art Center. That is housed in the existing designated under the Heritage Act buildings at the north end of the property. That part of the property is external to the plan of subdivision. So we are not proposing any development up there. And I'll flip to the next slide here. And as you can see on this plan of subdivision, the left side of this, so north is more towards the left of what you're looking at on your screens. The left side of that is where that Cultural Heritage Center is, and you can see the outlines of the buildings there. Those are all be preserved, and there's a wide buffer to them. The development itself will be set back approximately 100 meters south of Burnhamthorpe Road. So in this subdivision, what we are proposing, or what the application was submitted as, and these is subject to change as we get through staff and technical review, but what we submitted was an application for 85 single attached lots at 11.6 meters, 48 single attached lots at 9.8 meters in width, 52 townhouse units at 6.1 meters in width. There's also a variety of other blocks on the property, including obviously the roads. There is a large what I'm calling at the moment a temporary floodplain, and that's block 147, that large green triangle right in the middle. It's temporary because the creek itself is not on the subject property, it is on the adjacent property to the west. And as they're going through their development process, the limits of that floodplain are likely to change from what we understand from our engineers. So right now, this is based on the property to the west not developing, and we have to deal with the floodplain that's there. If that floodplain does move, there may be opportunity for some additional units here. There's also the Core 10 woodlot wetland area on the south of the property, which is the right side of the drawing. And the limits of that were previously established long before through the Joshua Creek tributary EIR FSS process, and we've respected the limits that were established there, and that's what's shown on this. Street A is a north-south avenue transit corridor. Street C is also an east-west avenue transit corridor. And those are also the main areas on the property. There is a total of 8.9 hectares of developable land out of the total 21-hectare area. There were 76 single-attached equivalent of allocation units that were assigned to this property, which isn't enough to complete it, but at least it's enough to get us started. Get on to the next slide. So here's the current official plan. As you can see, it's designated neighborhood area and natural system, and that's primarily what most of it, the lands are. That double asterisk area, you may note, differs slightly from what our draft plan of subdivision shows. It shows a continual link through the property there. The official plan policies related to those double asterisks say that if this is an optional, this is an optional linkage. It's a 100-meter wide natural linkage. And what was decided before my client got involved by the other developers in the area processing the previous EIR FSS is that 100-meter linkage function would be provided along with the Joshua Creek corridor. So as you see the loop of the green going up, that area is where we're providing that 100 meters. So we're providing that same function where in fact it would be more land that's set aside because of that. But this is where we differ from what's shown in the official plan. Moving on to the North Oakville East Secondary Plan. This provides a finer level of detail building on what the official plan shows. And this divides the property up into some suburban area and general urban area, which is really, it comes down to density. Our plan is generally in conformance with this. The differences, again, between this plan and ours are really related to that 100-meter linkage, which policies allow us to put it in a different location. And that was something established before we actually even started working on this project. On to the zoning. So this is the current zoning bylaw. However, this does not reflect the recently approved Mattamy zoning immediately to the east of us, as the town's zoning bylaw line has not been updated yet, so I did not have anything recent to use in here. But as you can see right now, we're designated, we're zoned future development with a special exception 16. So future development just allows existing uses. The special exception 16 allows that art gallery and art school that's related to the Joshua Creek Heritage Art Center. Our proposed zoning now is a mix of general urban, suburban, the natural heritage system, and park. The park is a village square that we're providing half of it, and Mattamy's providing the other half, so it will be joined into approximately 3,000 square meter village square in line with the official plan policies. And we are proposing that we will be implementing these parent zones without any special exceptions required. So we were just looking at the standard zoning bylaw criteria for both these zones. We had our preliminary public information meeting on September 12th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. It was held virtually over Google Meet. Meeting notice was mailed to the neighbors using the mailing list that town staff provided. No members of the public logged in. So it was just myself, the developer's representative, and town staff. I did have one call prior to the meeting from an adjacent developer just asking about timing and when services could finally get to their property north of Burnhamthorpe. So finally, in conclusion, we are proposing 133 single detached dwellings, 52 townhouse dwellings. The village square, there'll be some future residential or future residential blocks that will be shared with Mattamy and with the property to the west that will add a few more units to that as those get laid out. We've moved the natural heritage system in terms of the 100-meter linkage to coincide with the existing Joshua Creek alignment. And the proposed subdivision will allow the extension and completion of the transportation and transit corridors and services that are envisioned and set out in the North Oakville East Secondary Plan. And it is a sequential and logical extension of this growing community. And with that, I thank you for your time. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Have we got any questions from members of council? Councillor Elgar and then Councillor Adams.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Duddick. With regard to the village square, I just wonder, can you explain a little bit more what you envision that village square to be? Is it going to be a hard surface and a few planted trees in a box, or what's your vision of what you're going to do there?
So I don't have the preliminary facility fit plan in front of me or with me tonight. We did submit it with our application, but essentially it would be because the size of Village Square is small, 3,000 square meters is not very big. It may have a small play structure, some benches, walking trails, but it would be mostly green space, open space, potentially with some trees. But we haven't gotten to the level of detail to finalize that. What we've shown is something that can work there. What it will actually look like when it's approved, we don't know yet. That's still subject to review.
So now the 100-meter linkage, that I remember very well, OPA 198 with that linkage that now it's got blown away, I guess, has it?
It's provided, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, I'll catch this later. Yeah, no, I'm just trying to figure out. So you've moved the linkage, it's not required anymore?
Through the chair to the councillor, it is required and it is provided, but it's provided to coincide with the Joshua Creek tributary. Now, I wasn't involved at the time that the OPA was originally approved, but there were policies put in place that we're relying on now. And essentially what my understanding of it, though, was that linkage was shown there as an option in case the tributary itself was realigned along that route. Because that would certainly, that option may have actually opened up some more developable land. This way, there's probably more land, in my opinion, that is being set aside for this linkage, because this linkage is longer because it has to follow an indirect route. What the North Oakville East's master plan and secondary plan show is a very direct route for that linkage, and now it is diverting to the north to come back and meet up to the start and end points that are already there. So we have it. The short answer is we're providing it. We're just providing it in a different location, and probably more land is involved in the linkage now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's news to me. I didn't realize we were moving those linkages. Thanks very much.
Councillor Adams.
Thanks very much for joining us this evening. Appreciate the work that you've been doing with our staff. I wondered if you could go back to, I think it was slide 5 that you had, which was effectively page 17 of our agenda, or the draft plan of subdivision slide. And I just wondered if you've had conversations with the adjacent landowner with respect to how the temporary traffic circle would work at the end, and whether that is really going to be necessary in terms of being able to complete that street.
Yeah, so in short answer, and through the chair to the councillor, yes, we have had conversations with them, and I would say for the first year or so I've been working on this file probably since 2020, I think, and so for the first year or so, they didn't really want to consider any development opportunities. Now they are working through this. However, you'll note there is also a very small another parcel. So the main land holding to the west is owned by I believe is the Capo Bianco family, and they are preparing some preliminary reports now to look at what can be done. However, the road itself, if it follows the alignment we've tentatively shown, where it would intersect with Burnham Thorpe Road, there is a small holdout property there. It's probably, a 20 meter, 30 meter wide property with, 30 meters depth. And that landowner, we have not had any discussions with, to my knowledge. And right now, from what I understand from the owner, from my client, is that they're not interested in selling or doing anything at this time. So there are two other properties involved, and one of them is looking to move forward. The other one, unfortunately, right now is not.
Okay, thank you very much. Then to our staff, I appreciate the matters that are listed as under review on page 4 of 6 of the report. I support those issues. I wonder if staff could also report back on the ability of the transportation plan to be completed in a reasonable period of time. And specifically with respect to this point that we've just spoken about. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions? Seeing none. Oh, sorry, Councillor Z.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question about the entrance. So I cannot see very clear on the map. So Joshua Creek Art Center, so that will be on the north of your project, right? So that will be sharing the same entrance from Burnesville?
So through the chair to the councillor, is we are fully dependent on Mattamy for access in terms of, for roads and also for extending services to us. Right, this subdivision will not have direct access to any existing public roads. So Mattamy needs to proceed ahead of us. And then, and we've had a lot of coordination with them to line up these roads and the lot fabric. But we are dependent on them for bringing these roads to our doorstep, essentially.
Okay, thank you for your information. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just poll the audience before I restrict it to table. Are there any speakers to this item? Seeing none, I'll restrict it to table and look for a motion. Councillor Adams?
Thank you very much. I'd be happy to move the recommendations that are contained in the report. And if staff could read off any additional items they caught, in particular that transportation item, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Further to the items that were outlined in the staff report, I took notes that staff will report back on details regarding the Village Square and NHS linkage options, provide information on the traffic management plan and temporary turning circle, and then provide details on access to the property from the Mattamy lands.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan. That's what you're moving, okay?
Yes, that's satisfactory. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you very much. And thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
We will move to our discussion item, 7.1, and of course, we're in the Committee of the Whole. I believe we have Gabe Charles and Kirk Bigger for any questions that council may have in regards to this item. Oh, Councillor, yes, I just see it. Thank you. Councillor Elgar, then Councillor Haslett Thiel.
Thank you very much. Appreciate this coming up before us tonight. I really feel that we have a real chance here to do something good for Oakville and every ward right through until 2051 if we approach this properly. To me, it's not just about Midtown. It's about projections out to 2051. And I'm wondering if staff, in fairness to them, like if staff would give them time to come back with what are the numbers we are supposed to be getting to for 2051? Like what are our targets for population or households? What are they for 2031 locked in? Like I know it's the 2031 is like 33,000 units, but we need to know the mix for sure of what the units are. I know we got information from the regional staff on the singles and semis and the rows and the apartments and everything. And it looks like, if I look at it, there's like 32,186 as of June the 14th that the region had pulled together. And what we need to 2031 is 33,000. So basically we're there. But that's to me only part of the story. And if they have time to come back with whatever the anticipated people per unit, and people per unit by the singles, by the rows, by apartments, if we can get that information brought back to us, I think we can make some good decisions going forward and not waste a lot of time bouncing around with one little item. We need the big picture and move it backwards. I do feel, I like what the staff have written in the report. I think if we get the big picture and move it backwards, like we've got the Trafalgar Urban Core, the Dundas Urban Core, the Uptown Core, the Hospital District, the Palermo Village, the Midtown, and Bronte. Like we've got it all. We know what we want with people per unit. You know, if we can get that locked in, we know the units, and if we can get that to know right to a projection, you know, we're not going to be 100%, but if we can get the projection of when the pipe's going to be there for, because there's no use, you can't build anything if we don't have the pipes going in and out. So I just think staff need more time to give us the numbers. I can't see it's holding anything up. I like to get it done for the end of the year, which we said we would. I think if we have let staff get the time to do it, I'd be very happy. And I like numbers, and I think you could almost plug everything into an Excel spreadsheet and project and see so that we all know where we're going by ward almost, because you get the urban, all the different where we want to densify. Let's find out. Like you look at our official plan, like now the province is saying 150 people per unit, but we've already got 200 in for Midtown. And I think, I don't know whether Bronte, Sean and Jonathan will know better, but I figure that I think that's still 150 there. And maybe it should be 200, but if we can get all the numbers, I think we can make good decisions and make them educated decisions. So that's all I'm going to say. Like I think the staff, we've got the ability to do it. And I just like to get it done right, but with the aim of start at the top and let's move backwards so that we know where we're going. And that's what I'd like to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Charles, did you want to respond to that, or do you want to wait until the end of the discussions and respond in turn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm in your hands in terms of process, and if you want to wait till the end, I'm totally fine doing that too. Thank you.
Councillor Haslett-Theo, and then Councillor O'Meara and Councillor Nanda. Oh, okay. Councillor O'Meara, you can go first.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm wondering if staff during this could spend some time to help us understand the concept of a complete community. I mean, as we sort of stretch wide and far, you know, in the past, you know, it was easier to say, okay, well, eventually we can put some things in places. But as we look to dense communities, in the research that I've done, it's very difficult to understand really when we talk about that, what we're meaning. The growth plan for the growth plan for the Golden Horseshoe, you know, defines it, you know, as most people understand, mix of jobs, stores, services, full range of housing, transportations, and public service facilities. But what it doesn't do is say, you know, what's the expectation of how far or how close in proximity that needs to be. It also says that growth plans are mixed use neighborhoods or areas within cities. So I think we need to understand what's the expectation of a complete community in our areas. When I looked at the growth plan in British Columbia, they specifically say it's services within a 15 to 20 minute walk. When I looked at what that equates to, that's basically at a mild to medium brisk walk is about a mile. So in Ontario, it would be about 1.5, 1.6 kilometers. So I'm wondering if we could put some meat on the bones and see what that means, what's within a 1.5 or 1.6 kilometer radius of the area we're talking about. What are we defining as public facilities? You know, and look comprehensively at that. I think we have a duty to let people in Midtown know, you know, whether or not this will be a complete community and in everything that they would expect. So hopefully we can parse out some time to map that. How far is this community center? How far is a pool? How far is a skating rink? How far is a green space? How far are the things that people would incorporate as a complete community? And then we can have a frank discussion about, you know, how many people per, I don't know, acre do we have? And in our master plans, how many people do we need to support a community center, or you know, how many people in an area should we have for these things? So I'd just like to explore that a little bit more if the committee can delve into that one. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Mayor. Councilor Nanda.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I just have a quick question and for the staff about, I noticed that there was a previous plan already in place. And so I'm trying to understand, is this is a plan that was already approved? So are we looking at changing this plan that was previously approved?
Through you, Madam Chair. The Midtown, at the time, in 1999, it was referred to as the Midtown Core Land Use Planning Study, something along those lines, which was identifying how Midtown was going to develop for the next 25 or so years. And so there was a mix of employment and residential, and it was really in response to the provincial planning construct that was at that time. In 2009, with the Livable Oakville plan, there was an update to Midtown to really reflect what was the planning rules of that vintage. And we're going through that exercise yet again to ensure that the policies for Midtown are updated to comply with provincial policy.
But was there a recent plan in 2021 or something that was approved too, or it was updated?
In 2021, there had been some presentations that staff had made to council through the public meeting, and I believe again in 2022 as well. And what council saw back in May was the third statutory public meeting that was associated with Midtown.
So what we're looking at now, what we're going to do is probably going to look drastically different from what these previous plans are in terms of building heights. On one of the schedules, it said 8 to 20 or 6 to 12, but now we're looking at increases of double that. Is that going to be all across Midtown?
Through you, Madam Chair, it doesn't go across all of Midtown. The way I look at this is just an evolution of the planning policy to be reflective of what the provincial policy statement is, now it's known as provincial planning statement, the changes that have been made at the regional level, how we're looking at our population forecast, and also in response to what the market pressures are right now to ensure that the policies that we're looking at for Midtown are the most up-to-date and the most responsive.
Okay, thank you. And I hope, as my other council colleagues were saying, that if we're making these big changes, that we also look at making changes in terms of complete communities and more infrastructure and more resources that the community would need if we're going to make such high density. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nanda. Councilor McNeese.
Thank you, through you, Acting Mayor. I just wanted to pick up on something that Councillor Elgar mentioned and sort of looking at this 2050 vision, or this kind of long-term vision, and I think the term is sort of backcasting it or kind of bringing it back to today. I'd also like to add to what Councillor Elgar was saying is I'm interested in what planning tools could help us get there. So, you know, I know there's master plans, there's precinct plans, there's secondary plans, you know, tools like pre-approved development through the community planning permit process as well. So I'd be interested in, if we sort of paint that picture, what kind of implementation mechanisms do we have to get ourselves there? And then I just want to touch on public engagement. I was, you know, very encouraged by the 200 plus folks that showed up and many that came to the open house and 18 delegations. And I think we got some good momentum started there, and I wouldn't want to lose that. Some processes that I've seen other communities use to keep people engaged along the way are citizens panels, which use a cross-section, sort of a representative sample of a community to get an unbiased opinion of what Midtown could be, and they typically report back to a council, and we have that voice covered. It's typically something that happens along the way through a series of meetings. I think that could be incredibly valuable for a group like this. Also, I noticed that I believe it was Brampton did sort of an expert panel that had a summit and a symposium, and it really brought forward best practices and case studies from around the world and tapped into some national experts and international experts. And I think that helps us look beyond some examples in Toronto and what's close to us. And you know, with the importance of this decision, I think we need to be looking everywhere we can. And then the third sort of thing I would suggest is an advisory group. So we had 18 delegations. I think we learned a lot from the talent that's in our community. And from what I've seen in projects, an advisory group is quite beneficial when it's balanced as well. So we heard, I think one industry person speak, but we certainly realize that as we move this forward, we need to have all parties at the table to help make these difficult decisions, and sometimes we may have to compromise. So those are three sort of suggestions I have for how we keep engagement going throughout the process. I would sort of not be too happy if we just sort of wait till the end and start doing engagement and more reporting out than having sort of key points along the way where groups are giving us information from the community, a cross-section of the community. And I've seen it be really valuable in many other cities and towns across the country. So I'll stop there, but I may have some more thoughts along the way.
Thank you very much. Councillor Haslett-Theo.
Thank you, through you, Acting Mayor Duduk. So thank you very much for the staff report. In preparing for tonight's meeting, I went back and spent some time looking at what some of the delegates' comments and questions were, and it calls out, in fact, for sort of greater clarity and specificity on the vision for Midtown. And that's in terms of what we already heard from Councillor Elgar around population forecasts, but it was also about demographics, mix of use, sustainability, park standards, infrastructure, and then, as Councillor O'Meara mentioned, complete communities. And throughout it all, what we heard is people were supportive of growth and the need for growth, and that we have targets and that we have to achieve them. They're just looking to get the right plan in place. And they clearly, as Councillor McNeice has mentioned, they want to be involved. And so if there's a method in the public consultation piece, which was a key line in the amendment, that you can map out how they would be involved, whether it's an advisory group, how it would report in. But these are the folks that are looking to the future, and I think they were very constructive in their comments, and I would hope that we would put a plan in place for that greater engagement. There were a couple comments in the delegations that I didn't see in the topics that you'd laid out, and one was a third-party review of the methodology of the population forecasts and the assumptions it was based on. So if you could just clarify if Jacobs or how the population forecasts are being kind of pulled together for that meeting that has the topic population forecasts, that would be helpful. And will there be a peer review of it of any sort?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I lost rock, paper, scissors. So with the population forecast, what we're working through right now with Halton Region, and as Councillor Algar was pointing to, was that overall population forecast. So what is the number for Oakville? And we need to put that, then we need to put the Midtown context in that broader town-wide context. So that exercise, known now as the Joint Best Plan Estimates, is the exercise that we have to go through to understand what is that population that we're going to get through 2031, through 41, through 51. The other part to that is to also look backwards to understand what are our persons per unit, as Councillor Elgar mentioned, PPUs, and how does that now start to translate in the context of all of the planning applications that we have in the mix. Yes, we have a housing pledge of a target of 33,000 units by 2031. What is the component of that goes into Midtown? That is the work that we're currently working through right now. And as part of that, we have had discussion with Jacobs about what that would look like and how they would be able to present that and how to be able to get into the details a little bit more for council so that there's more comfort in understanding how we're doing the population forecasting and the employment piece as well.
So thank you for that explanation, and I look forward to Jacob's comments. One of the other delegates talked about a comprehensive impact assessment, and others spoke about avoiding unintended consequences with some of the land use permissions. How can this impact assessment be incorporated into the committee's work plan?
Through you, Madam Chair, those are all items that we can take back to the consultant team to really identify how we're going to report to the committee. We do see these not necessarily as being sequential topics that we will then present to council, but really to understand what is the theme that weaves through all of these different components. We expect that the committee engagement will be iterative along the way, and I'm sure there will be questions that committee will have that we may not be able to answer right then and there, but we'll be bringing these things back to council. So the idea is to work with this committee over the next 6 or so months and be able to touch on all of these items, but they may not be, as I was saying, sequential. We may be touching on each of these items several times throughout the next few months.
So thank you, because that's a really great segue to where I wanted to go. There is a concept that I believe Jacobs has experience with called human-centered design. And it is all around integrating the different components of what builds a community. And I'm wondering if your thought is that Jacobs could facilitate that kind of framework for the committee to kind of put a bit more meat on the bone. It really strives to align groups around a vision, around understanding in greater depth the problems, achieving that vision, as well as exploring alternative concepts that may achieve that vision and or deliberate, as the report says, on the pros and cons of what we currently have in place and what the possible proposal. Is that something, Jacobs, you see being able to provide us with?
I think it's my turn, Madam Chair. The reality is we've listed the topics, but they're not discrete. They're actually very interconnected and interrelated. So to your point, Councillor, you can't actually conduct this exercise without that framework. And Jacobs, as you know, is steeped in that approach, as well as the other sub-consultants. Urban Strategies is certainly one of them that will do a lot of the planning and urban design work with the committee. So that is the intention. I think that's the framework that we're approaching it with. I will also add, relate to the numbers. We have the joint best planning estimates. We also have on retainer CN Watson, who will do the infrastructure planning for virtually most municipalities in Ontario. So they will take those joint planning estimates and be able to digest those, and does this make sense from a financial infrastructure planning perspective, as well as NBLC is another expert in demography. So we've got, we tried to think of every question, and I guarantee you we haven't thought of all the questions, but as many as we could brainstorm and make sure that we had expertise within the banner of Jacobs to answer a lot of those questions as well.
So thank you for that. And so can I take from that then that when we're in committee, we'll have a facilitator that allow us to have some dialogue rather than just, constantly ask you questions and feel like we're
through you, Madam Chair. The intention is to have it as interactive as we can possibly make it. We do have a facilitator on board under the Jacobs banner, who and the framework that we're working with is every time we come to committee that we have information updates, but also engagement. Key questions here. Where we are in the process. Here's what we think. Here's our options. Can we get some thoughts around that? So we're trying to build in that very as integrated and seeking engagement as we possibly can.
And so not to take the microphone all night long, I just, in terms of affordability and inclusionary zoning, will there be some discussion about that as well through the process?
Through you, Madam Chair, and this answers Councillor McNeese's as well. Those implementation tools will be a subject as well. So how do we get that? How do we see that vision? Inclusionary zoning is one. Community planning permit system is one. Making sure we have those tools in the policy framework that enable us to do that work.
Okay, I'll stop there for the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You just mentioned that you believe you've thought of every question. As we go through the next couple of months, we don't have a lot of time, and nobody wants to see this delayed. How would you like us to get the questions that we hear when we meet with residents groups or residents or from ourselves to you, so we don't have to wait until the next cycle, if you will?
So through you, Madam Chair, we hope that this is this will be a fluid, and I think I said, and I'll have to watch the tape, I can guarantee you I didn't think of all the questions. We have as many questions as we can think of, but certainly we do have the intention of providing those answers, and it's a continuous intake. If you get questions, please forward them at this point to Mr. Charles or myself, and we'll make sure they get through to the appropriate expert on staff. I will also say that there's the committee of the whole process, and then there's the other implementation pieces that happen between the meetings. So there is going to be engagement happening, for instance, on designing Midtown. So there'll be the milestones of the meetings, but in between that, there'll be a lot of dialogue with the public as well. So we're going through that right now with Jacobs to design those programs and to make sure that they're open enough to make sure that people have the appropriate amount of input and feel heard in the process.
All right, I thank you for that. I appreciate the comments from our council colleagues in terms of what does a complete community look like? What does it look like in a growth center? You know, this is the first time that any of us are going through this. One of the questions that I trying to figure out is the Park Rec Library master plan is coming back likely when this committee is complete, when we're done. How do we look at that in terms of the complete community? We know that some of the proponents will be talking about privately owned public space. How do we know what the needs are going to be by this number of people that'll be living here, and hold that up against what the developers will be putting into place? There's going to be some gap, whether it be a dog park for the thousands of dogs that are going to be living in these condos, or whatever it may be. How do we tie those together?
Through you, Madam Chair. So the key aspect of this is to make sure that the policies that the committee will construct are fluid enough or have that enough flexibility to adapt to those pieces. A lot of those details that come out through the master plan exercise are implementation details that are often incorporated into the next process, whether it's site plan or subdivision. So as long as the policies are flexible enough for us to take in that information and then make sure that the implementation tools are there to to use community space as a joint venture with developers, for instance, or make sure that we have the appropriate amount when we design our parks. How do we want to design the usage of those parks, which is the next iteration. So I will also say that it's once again, it's interrelated. Like, we'll get some good information through the process. So we may not have the conclusions, but at least we'll get the flavor of the direction and use those community engagement pieces as well as we build the policies. So there are opportunities, and I think that the implementation tools are going to be really important as we take the master plan recommendations and implement those going forward.
So would that be similar to currently the proposed OPA talks about promoting green building standards? So that would be another discussion in terms of, is promoting good enough, or looking at the the OP in its entirety, what the wording will become to ensure that that occurs?
So I'll talk philosophically because we'll have to get the experts, the drafters, to make sure.
He was enjoying the rest.
I'm out on the limb here, but the concept in, say, for instance, in the green building standards, your official plan policies enable you to implement the next iteration. So whether it's through a bylaw or whatever tools that we can gain from the province, it's not prohibited, but enabled by our policies. So that's type of enabling policy that we would try to make sure that we can, as policy evolves in other levels, or there's other tools that we can implement, they can be quickly incorporated into the Midtown fabric.
All right, thank you for that. And Mr. Charles, the initial plan had districts east and west of Trafalgar Road. With the change to where it is currently, would appreciate feedback at some point in terms of, are they going to be built at the same time? Is there a lull because of perhaps ongoing land assemblies? Is there going to be the same look and feel traversing Trafalgar Road in terms of heights and densities? I'm just one of the questions that came up at a public meeting that we had.
Through you, Madam Chair. So a couple of points, I guess, on that. When staff were looking at exactly that question, how do we unify the east and the west? How do we ensure that Trafalgar isn't a barrier for how people will traverse the east and the west side? So council may recall one of the main elements that we had looked at was using something like the promenade to go from the west to the east, to really focus on that pedestrian activity as someone were to move through Midtown. So those types of things were the intent. Also, by virtue of allowing for or recommending more mixed use to the east side of Trafalgar, that also really negated the need to have very distinct districts, but to really find ways to unify that overall vision for Midtown on both sides of Trafalgar. The other point is, and as you note, Councillor, with infrastructure and the timing of that, the region is a partner in this. It's critical that they're there, and one of the key components for the Midtown Implementation Program is how are we going to be dealing with servicing? How do we start to move that ahead? The region is there with us, and one of the key pieces to implementing Midtown will be that overall phasing strategy for how we move through. The benefit that we have on the east side of Trafalgar is we have one large land holding there, which will help spur on the east side to make sure that we're not having a piecemeal approach to Midtown, that we're able to make some traction right across.
I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Just a couple of quick questions that are coming up. We did have discussion, I don't want to lose sight of this, of a clarification of parkland acquisition strategy. Is this still part of the Midtown implementation? I just want to ensure that that's not lost. I think we all have a concern about these major developments going in, and we don't have enough parkland and so forth. So is that acquisition strategy still in the hopper? I'll leave that with Neil, I guess, or Dave.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As it relates to parks, there's a couple different pieces going on right now. One is the parks plan, the 2030, which was the town's overall park strategy. That was done in the interest of creating a parkland dedication bylaw. That, as council is aware, is under appeal. So we need to work through that. At the time that we were doing that, there was also some changes to provincial legislation. So that has also factored into how we are approaching what the quantum will be for Midtown. That said, the direction that the parks plan took hasn't really deviated. There hasn't really been a real reason to undermine the direction that park strategy has provided to council. So the idea now is to really ensure that the parkland that we're getting for Midtown is the most that we possibly can get under the legislation. So those are pieces that we need to work through. That overall parks hierarchy for Midtown is another component. The consultant team is well aware of that, and that will form a key component to the streetscape plan, the public realm plan, to really show how we are going to be creating and reinforcing the need for parks.
I guess my second question is the acquisition strategy. This is above and beyond what could come through the development. Is that the town take an active role in acquiring parkland or property to have extra parkland, added parkland to the midtown? That's what I'm really focusing on. Gabe, are we moving in that direction?
Through you, Madam Chair, there is the need to look at land acquisition, not just in Midtown, but town-wide, and that doesn't apply to just parks, but also to roads and road locations that we're going to need as well. So it's not going to be necessarily specific to Midtown. There's components of that, certainly, but that does have to be done in a town-wide context.
Agreed. The only comment I'll make, and we see a lot of the development happening in our wards with respect to, and we're losing a lot of commercial space, or what is happening, reduction of commercial space with the development. So I think that's something that we need to understand on the commercial or services provided in back to the whole community concept, what that means in proportion or relation to our units, our living units versus commercial. I think we need to have some kind of standard because what's happening, we're bringing more people in, but we're reducing square footage of commercial and services in that area. And just think we're talking 5-minute walk, 10-minute walk. We really need to zero in on that as part of the Midtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McNeese.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I'll just do my second round here. So one thing I just wanted to mention was with the town's vision being updated, I think that's sort of new information and it's very timely and just some subtle changes, but I think directionally, it talks more about vibrancy, sense of community, a place for all, and I'd love to see that sort of reflected in some of this Midtown work. Secondly, I'd just like to emphasize what Councillor Haslett-Thiel mentioned around community-centered design process. I noticed that the consultant Jacobs has a bit of experience in that, and what I like about that is it's spend sort of the majority of the time on better understanding the problems and issues that we're facing, and less of the time of racing to solutions that may need to be adaptable and mendable along the way, but really understanding kind of what's going on, what are the issues, what are the problems that need to be addressed. And I think I've seen it in practice, and I think that's a valuable tool or process. And then just lastly, I know we don't have a ton of time and there's sort of a big mandate here, but I think we do have some time, and I'd love to see a Gantt chart or something that just shows these different processes and where's the kind of chunk of time in the sequence of less than 6 months, some sort of process map, just so we've got that sort of confidence that we can get this stuff done on time, because, I think delaying this is almost not an option at this point with what's going on provincially. So I'd love to see it just visually kind of mapped out there if possible. And that's all for me.
Thank you. Councillor Haslett-Thiel.
Thank you, through Acting Mayor Dudek. Just building on that, because what I really love what Councillor McNeese has said earlier was around an expert panel, and Brampton did some work on it, which really allowed multiple inputs into, you've got this space, this is what we currently were thinking of doing it. Are there other alternatives? Just for my own clarity, will we be able to get an independent view from within the consortium of alternatives beyond what the draft OPA says?
Through you, Madam Chair, in short, that's the intention. So we've set aside the draft OPA because it really is just a moment in time of what the current thinking is. Then we're going through this process, and then we'll look at whether how the draft will need to change, because there'll be undoubtedly be changes to that. So the short answer is yes.
Thank you. So when I go back to what Councillor Elgar framed at the very beginning, if we understand what we must achieve and where we have to have additional capacity and population, then we can start to build towards a common alignment and vision. And I mean, I have probably 50 questions here, which I will not take you all through. You can all go. But I will share them with you independently, and I'll CC people. But to me, the best use of our time is to get aligned on vision and understanding the problems and the gaps, and then get to exploring great options that may give us food for thought on how we can make this an amazing neighborhood, all of which is what everybody on council wants to achieve, without slowing us down. Because I've heard some comments that, well, you know, this is slowing us down. And, you know, with 100% clarity, how is it even possible to slow down when you do not even have the pipes ready to go in the ground yet and all of those pieces? So we're not slowing it down. And I just think this is a moment in time that we have to try and get this right. And so and I thank you for your wisdom in finding Jacobs, but if they can help and frame us and move us to a greater alignment around vision and those different ways of looking at Midtown, I think we will be in a better place in December, because we want to get to December with solutions. And so you're not frustrated that, well, what are we going to do with these land use permissions? So with that said, I want to thank you for the effort so far. I look forward to a framework, and I look forward to getting some real answers around things like what Metrolinx will contribute and how the transportation system will actually flow and phase, and examples of how 43 hectares of land can be built out into a livable neighborhood.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers, questions? Just looking at the screen, don't see any. Before I restrict it to table, I'll just poll the audience. Is there anybody here who would like to add additional comments that weren't already covered? Okay, seeing none, then I'll restrict it to table and I'll look for a motion. But before I look for a motion, I wonder if I could just ask one brief question, and that is, it sort of touches on the fact that when we ask questions of staff, rather than duplicate efforts, copying each other in terms of what the question is and thereby getting the answers, will we be able to have some sort of a landing page on the website whereby the public can see the questions that have been raised and have been answered, so that they can gain insight to it in addition to members of council? I don't know if, I'll just leave that with you and give some consideration in regards to that. Look for a motion to receive the report. Councillor Haslett-Theo.
Happy to move it.
Are there any opposed? Okay. That is carried. Thank you. We have no confidential discussion items or advisory committee minutes, but we will rise and report to council, and I'll need a motion for that. Councillor Longo, thank you. I rise and report that the Committee of the Whole has met and has made recommendations on consent items 4.1, public hearing item 6.1, discussion item 7.1, as noted by the clerk. Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you. And now was that was just, oh, did I jump ahead? I did, didn't I? Okay, now I need a motion and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Councillor Grant. Ditto, rerun, okay? That the report and recommendations of the Committee of the Whole have been approved. So that is carried. And do we have any new business, emergency, congratulatory, or condolence? Councillor Giddings.
Through you, Madam Chair. Go Red Devils. Oakville Trafalgar High School senior boys rugby team won gold at the OFSAA AAA Championship for the second time in a row. After a hard battle, Oakville Trafalgar High School's team seized a tight victory over Uxbridge 13-2. For the second time in a row. That's quite the accomplishment. And they've done that twice in the school's history. In the last 6 rugby seasons, Oakville Trafalgar High School have won 3 gold, 2 silver, and 1 bronze at the playoffs, 5 of those medals achieved from gold medal games. So congratulations to OTHS.
Well said. Before I go to the consideration and reading of the bylaws, I did want to draw to attention for members of council and those who are watching at home, this will be the final meeting for our clerk, Kathy Patrick, in the clerk's chair. She'll be retiring and enjoying a much-deserved rest. To say you're going to be missed is an understatement. I think the one thing for me that I've always enjoyed the most is no matter what the situation was, no matter how overwhelming, you were unflappable, but you had such an upbeat and cheery what shall I say, way of handling things that you gave us reassurance that there's nothing to worry about. It's all in hand, whether it's getting our computers up and running or whatever. Anyway, I know there'll be a celebration on Wednesday afternoon that some of us will be able to attend. I know some of you who aren't able to attend have already passed along your congratulations, but a very much big thank you for all you've done and for all you've shared with us and the Oakville community. So thank you. Shall I ask comments?
Thank you very much, members of council and acting mayor, Councillor Dudek. Just want to say it's been a great 33 years. Wow. I know. I started 33 years. I wish. I did start in the building department for 2 years on contract, and then I just made my way through the clerk's department to where I am now. I've worked with a lot of members of council and 2 mayors, and they've both been great. And I just want to say thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I wish you all the best as you finish your term at council. Thank you. Thank you for the kind words.
Well deserved, believe me. Can I get a mover and seconder for the reading of the bylaws? Councillor Heslett-Thiel, Councillor Adams. Any opposed? That is carried. And this meeting's adjourned. Thank you for all your deliberations and your comments. And thank you, staff, for all the hard work you put into preparing this. Obviously, you did a very good job. It moved seamlessly. Okay, thank you.